The Cerebral Entertainment Podcast.
Turn me down a little. I'm just loud. Okay. All right.
All right, ready?
Yeah, go ahead and start us off. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to yet another riveting edition of the Cerebral Entertainment Podcast. I am James, and with me, as always, is my good friend Colt.
Absolutely.
And with us on the line today, we have all the way from the UK, Mr. Sam Harris. How you doing today, Sam?
I'm doing great. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Yeah, man, we're stoked to have you on. I was very delighted that you kind of took me up on my offer to jump on the show. And I always track LinkedIn for special people who are out there doing adventurous things, and I live as much as I can vicariously through those people. And I have got my work cut out for me to live vicariously through you, because you are out there doing some amazing things. And like I said before we started recording, there's no way that we could possibly get to everything that you do. So I'm going to hit on a couple of the I don't know if you call them main points or just whatever we can get into, I guess, and see where that takes us. So
Sure.
Yeah, thanks again for coming on, man. And I guess to start off, why don't you give us a little bio? Tell us a little bit about yourself, present yourself to our listeners, and let's get to know you a little bit.
Sure. Thanks for a very lovely introduction. I kind of feel a bit like that's a bit over the top, because I swear that every day I feel like I'm really boring and like not much is going on. And you're like, I look at myself, I have no idea how I've managed to do the things I do, because like everyone I'm around seems to move so much faster. I'm like quite dyslexic, and it takes me forever to do anything, but somehow I seem to do quite a lot in like a year. But each week it's like nothing happens. I just make a mess. But on that introduction where I sort of talk about how useless I am, I've done quite a few things. I started my first business when I was 20, which whilst I was at uni, which I grew for a few years and sold, and I ran the like a business incubator for the university that I was at. Then since then, I've done like quite a lot of adventure, and I've ran quite a few startups in the meantime. I did run one that was called Thrill Seekers Adventure Club, which is all about going on adventures with people. But it was a really great way to kind of get paid and earn money doing fun stuff. But I got bored of like dealing with people's problems. I worked out what I needed to do to scale it, and was like, I don't want to run this business at all. So I stopped doing that. But I have done some pretty fun things. Like I went to North Korea, I hitchhiked across Kazakhstan, spent like a month in Tasmania living with some hippies in the woods. Have you heard of Vipassana, like the 10-day silent meditation retreats, which lots of people are doing these days. It's not that unique, but it's still a pretty hard thing to go and do, and sit and meditate for 10 days without talking to humans or looking at anyone and stuff. And so that was pretty fun. Well, the first few days were kind of horrible, but after that I had like probably the best time of my life. What else have I been doing? I've been running my podcast for the last 4 years. I've had some really cool guests on there, like guy that invented Siri, Just Eat, like people that lead cool stuff, or just people that are like really happy. Also, it's been really nice just learning from people. I guess you guys like living vicariously as well, so that's been really helpful. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I was quite dyslexic. I was really bad at talking as well when I was young, and I still wasn't very good at it when I started my podcast. But in the last year, I went from, well, not really having done much stuff to I went into like stand-up comedy. I did like a TEDx speech, and those are things that like I definitely couldn't have done like a few years ago at all. Just I'd be completely terrified. I couldn't even lead like a WhatsApp voice message to someone because it was too difficult. So I've been trying to work on like growth stuff that just always challenges me, I guess. And other thing, yeah, I've nearly died a few times. So I think this is probably wait, and I run a business, but yeah, it's annoying having too many things going on. Like that's one thing I think I'm working on is sort of doing less but productively. Like I said, I feel like I'm going nowhere because I'm trying to do too many things all at once, and you kind of sometimes the old thing breaks out and actually happens, but mostly it's not that effective. Whereas I feel if I was sort of more focused, I might be a lot more effective. So I think I told you guys I'm having a 10-day, not silent meditation retreat, just like a silent personal retreat where I'm just shutting off all humans and just kind of letting my brain do like a million things, but actually like get to the end of them. So like doing lots of writing and creative stuff and trying to not like just waste it watching TV or being on email or calls and things, which is what seems to happen all the time. Well,
so you're not actually going anywhere for this 10 days. You're just kind of hunkering down.
My idea of a holiday is like just not talking to anyone and doing lots of writing. Whereas everyone else is like, Sam, do you not want to like maybe just not be productive for a week? I'm like, I feel like I've been unproductive all year. I need to get shit out of my brain. There's too much stuff going on.
Bulging. You mentioned, I've read you mention about using coping skills to overcome dyslexia. Can you give me any specifics on that? What was it that you were doing in order to kind of overcome the challenges that come with being dyslexic?
So dyslexia is interesting. I was just listening to a podcast earlier about a guy with dyslexia who says he just has like a really great memory for like words and things because he didn't learn too much from like his teachers. And I do not have a memory for words, and so I'd have to take aggressive notes, which helped me a little bit in the note taking, and I wasn't so good at actually reading on things. But I guess I was never very good at following instructions and was very able to just make stuff up myself, and I kind of remember things much better if I make it up. So I can remember all the songs I've written. I can't really remember songs that I learn on guitar that other people have written very well, stuff like that. But it's the same with any rules. So I kind of have to work it out for myself on most things. But like back in like science and stuff, I could just work that all out quite intuitively. Whereas English and speaking was really hard and didn't come naturally to me. So I kind of had to realize what I was bad at and just force myself to do things. So like doing the things that scare you, because I think it just takes me like 3 times longer to learn stuff when it comes to language and speaking. So just putting myself through the pain a bit more rather than being like, oh, I'm bad at this and running away from it. So like when I was starting my podcast and I realized I couldn't even record the intro or outro, and I was like, well, I haven't done like the voice WhatsApp notes to people, so I just didn't let myself send any texts. I just had to send like a WhatsApp voice note to all my friends for a month, just to like force myself to do things that I didn't like doing and get better at it. But in terms of getting better at writing and these things, again, like I had some extra coaching like once I kind of got diagnosed when I was kind of old, because I'm a bit, everyone thinks they're special in different ways, but I'm like is a high functioning dyslexic like a word or something? Because I know it sounds like really at myself. I'm in like the top 1% for IQ, which is cool. And so I was always in the top set for everything at school, and so they didn't really think I was that dumb. I just wouldn't ever finish any of my exams. I just do really well in them because everything I did was right. I just wouldn't ever finish. I'm just like really slow, but like smart at things. And so it was kind of weird to work out what I was bad at exactly. And it's just, just getting my thoughts out of me is the problem somehow, which is why I want to have like the time to myself to go and do the thing. And I guess it's like working out where you are weak and what you're good at, so you can kind of do the things you're good at, which is whether you're dyslexic or anything, is I guess the point of life. So what's really, really helped is meditating and journaling and having the time to kind of reflect each day to see what you are doing wrong, and just remind yourself each day of what troubles you have. And after a week of writing the same thing, that something's annoying you, it gets really annoying when you're like, oh, I didn't do that well this day. Oh, I didn't. And you're like, shit, why am I still doing this thing? Like, and so it's a really good way of making yourself more aware of what you want to improve on, I think. And anywhere where you can get coached by someone and get feedback is always a huge way to improve at stuff. So, or like, yeah, I'm sure you understand from running the podcast, is you get to listen through and hear yourself speaking and be like, wow, I asked a really shit question there, where I say like all the time. I really have to do that less. And when you are hearing yourself lots, it's really improves your rate, because it's all about, have you read Peak or most things that talk you about like how to improve and coaching wise is it's getting external feedback and just being able to like monitor yourself and see how well you're doing and track stuff. Because if you kind of just doing things without ever getting any feedback, you never really know how well you're doing. So yeah.
How long did it take you to get comfortable putting out a podcast?
I mean, I'm still constantly annoying. I've now got an editor, but it still always takes me a while to like get in the sort of headspace to bother to record like the intros and things. But I guess like the first year was difficult. The second year, I did a few podcast episodes by myself, which I wrote out like the entire transcript and sort of said word for word and wasn't too confident on. Like by the third year, I did a series where I just sort of recorded it on the go of just me saying some things. And I guess like, so the third year was the point where I got confident, I'd say. And then it was one of those that got picked up to be my TEDx speech in this year. Well, now last year. And because I was doing that, I was also like, I should do stand-up comedy because I want to be funny in my TED speech. And I think that really improved a lot of stuff. Just kind of getting a lot more comfortable with just putting yourself out there. Because I've got a business partner who's like ridiculously charismatic and he's constantly like the center of attention. And everyone knows him as like the funny guy. But I'd say about a third to a half of his stories are actually quite crap. But he just relentlessly sort of says them. And I kind of was always more of the perfectionist. Like if I'm going to speak, I'm saying something meaningful, and trying to get comfortable with just like not being funny or not having the best story or sort of start and it going wrong is really powerful, because then you can just try all the time and then you get like all the hours in and actually doing it. Whereas I just never got any practice talking because I just wouldn't talk, kind of thing. And so just trying to find ways that you can initially start off on stuff. So I did a podcast episode on like a life hack 2 years ago, where I was like, just do something you're bad at for like 10 minutes a day. And so taking like skill breaks, which I found really powerful for kicking off any skill. So instead of having cigarette breaks, I don't smoke. I used to like go outside with my friends that smoked and just do something that I was bad at for 10 minutes with them. So like I just take juggling balls with me and just drop balls for 10 minutes or something. And like anyone picks up the juggling balls, they can't do it, and you drop them and you just sort of go, oh, well, I can't do it. And you put them down. But if you just do it for 10 minutes, which isn't that long, after a month, you can juggle. And it's the same with if you learn to play guitar, like you can't quite make a chord shape and it hurts. So you just sort of give up after 2 minutes. But if you do it for 10 minutes a day for a month, you can actually sort of, you have the basis of the skill to then be able to practice for like longer and actually get really good at it. So that was a really good life hack for just breaking into any skill initially, just through the pain barrier, just making yourself do like 10 minutes a day. Top tip.
I like it. And you mentioned like going into things that kind of scare you. And so that could be speaking. It's funny you talk about how you weren't good at speaking for a while, because now you're a speaker, and your TEDx talk was great. I liked it, and you were funny. And so when you said that you were kind of breaking out into stand-up comedy, I was like, hey, I can see that. That works. Definitely. Yet another new adventure for you. But things like going to Tanzania, does that scare you when you go on an adventure like that? Are you nervous about the environment that you're going to be in? Because like you said, you had no roof. You're out there with, you said a bunch of hippies. I don't know if these are hippies that you knew. Do you do that for the, like, how do you come to make a decision to do something like that? Because that just sounds like it would scare the shit out of me, like being out there in that environment, out of my comfort zone, which I know is also that there's a lot of benefit to stepping out of one's comfort zone. Yeah, whether it's something small like juggling, or whether it's something big like camping out with no roof in a foreign place that sounds dangerous. I don't know how dangerous it actually is out there. I don't know much about it, but how do you get yourself to like to that point to where you're like, yeah, that's what I'm going to do?
Quite a few things. So I mean, mostly it wasn't too dangerous, but twice I did have a scorpion in my stuff as I was going to bed, which is kind of scary. But otherwise it wasn't too bad, really. Just as long as you don't mind not having a shower and washing in a river and getting grimier and grimier as the month goes on and that kind of stuff, it was fine. And not having any technology is a bit scary if you really like technology. But it was really nice after like the 3 weeks or so being there and coming back to what we perceive as reality, and just seeing all these people like tied to their screens and be like, what the shit is going on? Like humans are so like useless and not in like the real moment. But yeah, in terms of doing things that scare you, I'm not sure if if you think of like from like evolutionary perspective, then there's always the sort of the people that were genetically predisposed to be the ones that would like run away from the tribe and do something different, and sometimes they'd find like something better. And so I don't know if it's just part of that, or because like relatively speaking, I had quite a comfy existence growing up. I went to some nice schools and things, and so maybe you kind of seek extra challenge. Not really sure, but I've never been very comfortable in comfort, if that makes sense.
I like it.
As in, I get pretty stressed out by lack of stress, and like I had a therapist because I just got it for free from BetterHelp because I was advertising for them, and had never needed it because I'd never been depressed. But then it was really nice just to kind of spend time understanding myself, and she kind of diagnosed me as needing to have like some kind of thrill-seeking adventure or something. And like in the first lockdown, I kind of just ended up starting a bunch of stupid challenges. I restarted the Thrill Seekers Adventure Club at like having adventures inside. So I did 1 week where I did like a really horrendous press-up challenge on the hour every hour for the whole week, and just to see what would happen. It was really interesting in terms of how much time there is in the day when you get that perspective every hour to break and really hurt yourself physically. Or like another week I just only ate porridge. It's just like, I don't know, I just need to do something stupid. But then like when I was recording my podcast, I had like this volume knob on my headphones, and I was playing with it. I got it to silent whilst I was recording, and I couldn't hear the person. And then I was just like, I just started playing around with it and just like not listening to them to see if I could still ask funny questions and stuff. I don't know what was going on in my brain. I just needed some extra sort of stimulation of weird excitement. And yeah, I don't know if that's like something you can teach exactly. I think you can get a lot more comfortable with it around, you know, Tim Ferriss and for our work week, who went around the whole like comfort challenges, like try lying down when you're in the middle of a queue for something and just say that you're hanging out, and try asking 3 girls for a phone number every day, regardless of what they look like, and just doing things that scare you. And I think you do get a lot more comfortable with it and realize that nothing's really bad on that other side of fear. And certainly I've found all the things that I've done that were like really scary, where you've kind of gone through like the door of fear, like the other side has been so much more exciting and awesome. You realize that it's kind of holding you back from the good thing. And so I kind of recognize when I'm scared of something as the potential for good. Whereas so like with stand-up comedy, that used to be something that would just completely terrify me. But then by like a year ago, I was like, oh, if this is really scary, it must be freaking awesome if I go and do this. So I kind of went and did it. And so I think once you can teach yourself that fear is like freaking awesome to come over, then you kind of get quite excited by fear, and it's no longer actually a thing that scares you. It's like this is an opportunity for like some fun.
Yeah. Yep. It also kind of brings to my mind just being curious, being mindful of the fear. I've been recognizing this within myself lately, over the past several years now, but just that when I'm scared of something, when I'm experiencing fear over doing something new, or maybe something I've tried before and failed at, or wasn't happy with myself in that endeavor, I start to just become curious of the fear, and I wonder why I'm afraid. And so I start to dissect that a bit. And I agree with you, on the other side of that fear, there's almost always opportunity. If you don't succeed at what it was that you were trying to, the challenge you were trying to overcome, then you at least learn something. And there's a saying that I've seen several times that I either win or I learn. And so you don't ever really lose if you have that mindset. If you have that perspective that this is an adventure, it's something that it's going to be an education for me. It's not going to be a failure. I just have to apply myself and then go for it. But dissecting the fear itself, for me, helps me to learn more about myself. It helps me to kind of get a grip on where my mind is at in the first place, because I'm the type of guy, if I'm not careful, I can become stressed out without even realizing it. And I notice that my concentration falters, and I have trouble speaking. I have trouble thinking. And so I take a step back and I'm like, okay, well, I'm stressed out. What am I stressed out about? And I find that if I'm not mindful, if I don't use mindfulness, and I try to check in several times a day, if I'm not doing that, then I experience fear. I experience other types of emotions, and I don't even realize that what I'm going through. I'm not experiencing myself in the present moment. like I should be. And so life is living me as opposed to me living life. Yeah. And so what you were saying that really reminded me of that concept, something that I've been working on. So that's very interesting.
Yeah, cool. Thanks. Yeah, I think it's definitely being comfortable to not just run away from the fear instantly and to just sit with it and think about what it is and why it's there is really powerful. And just having the headspace, like you said. So I think whenever I've not had like a time for a morning routine or like an evening routine, it's always not been a good thing. And also if you can get some exercise in the middle of the day as well to kind of just get away from things is super, super helpful. There was one on the Vipassana meditation where you have the 10 days like silent retreat. It's not what you expect, like 1 hour of meditating, but it's like one of the most painful things you can do is sit completely still. And I mean, just think how much you can get a dead leg just for after 10 minutes of sitting on it, and then times that by like 1,000. And it's just like the craziest weird experiences will go through your body. But if you just try and like sit completely still and just kind of not react to it, you get quite used to feeling things in your body and not reacting and just sort of staying still and like trying to just like return to whatever you were thinking about, which should be your breath. And when you kind of get that at a deep fundamental level from doing this for so long, you then start to be able to do that with like other feelings that come into your body. So when like anger hits you or like fear or something, you can kind of go, oh, there's a big emotion hitting me. I wonder why this emotion is here. And you can be curious rather than like reacting to it straight away, which is really powerful. And I wish you could like teach that in a way that doesn't require sitting still for 10 days. But I'm not sure.
In other words, you're not just, in other words, you feel that feeling and you don't just be like, I'm just going to pull my phone out and look at Facebook now. Yeah. Instead of that, you actually, you're not doing anything else. Like you're kind of forced to go through those emotions and go through those thoughts and really dissect everything.
Yeah. I mean,
so like when you do these retreats and stuff like that, is it overwhelming to come back to technology, being kind of engulfed in technology like you are?
Yeah, it's really nice to not go straight back into it. And I definitely think you need like a few days afterwards to kind of deal with the real world again. But it does definitely make you question things, but it's a bit like fasting. I don't know if you've done it. I did like a 5-day fast once, and the first few days you do eat less, definitely your stomach's shrunk and things, but then you quickly go back to eating things. But you do know that you don't ever have to. And yeah, all the time that you normally spend snacking because you think you need food, you're like, well, I definitely don't need food because I could literally just not eat for 5 days starting from now if I wanted to. And yet here I am like in the fridge eating stuff. And it's hard to really be conscious of things when you haven't changed what your environment is and how you interact with it. So I think if you don't think about what you want to change when you come back around how you deal with technology and stuff, it doesn't make that much difference. And it's hard to like maybe fix everything all at once. So I think probably the biggest, I mean, I wasn't really an angry person before, but I certainly just don't really get too pissed off about anything at all now in that sense, which was a really big effect. But I still struggle with not paying attention to my phone too much or eating too much when I shouldn't be. And I'm hardly like enlightened. I think if it's like a journey of sort of 1 trillion steps, I've taken about 3 on the journey of enlightenment, but I've started. I'm getting there. So I think it's a long one, but it's definitely feel way better for it. So I'm pretty happy. And that's something I'm working on this year, I think. So last year I was, pretty insane, like the things I did. And I started the year, like I said, I kind of nearly died and like I couldn't even walk and stuff. And I did like the stand-up comedy, but I climbed like one of the most dangerous mountains in the world, which I hadn't even climbed a mountain before and stuff, which was pretty ambitious because I wasn't sure if I'd be able to walk. And so I kind of really did the whole facing my fears last year and stuff. But now I'm trying to focus on being more indistractable, as Nir Eyal calls it. If I really want to just be as productive as possible. And that kind of scares me because I've just always been very scattered. And so that's like actually a really big challenge for me this year, which is what I'm kind of aiming for. And I'm very much acknowledging that I'm quite shit at it at the moment. And so that's why I'm going for it. Whereas I could have gone for like, oh, this year I'm going to be unstoppable or something. But I'm like, I kind of did that last year. Like, just be sort of, yeah, I should do stuff that maybe doesn't sound as cool, but actually is really hard.
Mm-hmm.
So we're kind of glossing over the fact that you almost died. Let's get into that.
Yeah, I noticed that as well.
I need to know the story.
we need specifics, please.
Well, this happened a few times, but 2019 October, I was kite surfing and I was kind of far out, and I hadn't really kite surfed before, but this was like the second time I'd ever stood up, and it was really, really windy day, and I probably shouldn't have been out there anyway. But somehow, like, my leg slipped out the front of the board, and it snapped up super fast, hit my knee, and my thigh bone shattered. And so I just was in the middle of the sea, and my leg was just like this floppy mess everywhere. And I struggled just to like get out of my kite and stuff. And then I literally just sort of lay there being like, wow, I totally can't swim. And I was just like, what the fucking at my leg? Because it was just this like weird floaty thing. But then from the knee down, it was still my leg, but it was like sort of unattached to me because I could still move those bits. But then the bit in between my hip and my knee was just, I don't know, it was just like a bag of leg. And that was super surreal. And like I started swimming for a bit. It was like, wow, I totally can't swim. So I guess I'm just going to die. But then my instructor had seen it happen. So she came out to get me after sort of 10 minutes of me lying there and sort of dragged me in through the waves and stuff, and leg going everywhere. And that was, yeah, super shit. And then once you get to land outside of the sea, it was like way worse because it's hard to describe what it's like not having bones in like your limb. But like if you look like, as in this is just like fleshy stuff, and there's like a hard bone that keeps it there. But when like, if you just crack all the bone, like you just got like a floppy arm, and that's what happens with your leg. But when it's from your hip, you still got like all the weight of your leg going on from that. And like a leg's quite a big thing. It's hard to really describe, but when you don't realize how heavy your legs are because of like they're your legs and you've got your bones and structure in them. But when it's gone, it's just like this really heavy thing that's tied to your hip. And the bones, like, they're really sharp when they break, and so they kind of stabbed into my thighs and stuff. And so it was an ordeal. And yeah, so that was kind of quite risky. And then I lost like quite a lot of blood, and ended up being like really anemic for a few weeks and stuff. And yeah.
So doing what you were doing, did you have a lot of adrenaline going? Like the pain maybe not as bad as you would think it would be right off the bat?
It was super painful. As in, it was kind of like when you stub your toe. The first, like I did something and was like, oh, I think I've done something. Looked down and my leg was just like being where I was like, no, that's not right. And then it just hit me like, oh my God, I'm going to die. And I was just like, shit. And no, it's pretty bad. It's on the list of things that are worse than childbirth. Apparently, I haven't had a child, so I can't actually compare. But also, I'm not sure how painful that is or other things. But it definitely really sucked. That's for sure. And luckily,
it sounds brutal
beforehand. So I was, I kind of spent most of the time making jokes and things to people, which was not how I felt inside at all. But it was kind of odd. But yeah.
And so you climbed the mountain after you broke your leg, the most dangerous mountain. Is that correct?
Yeah. I actually booked that whilst in hospital, which my mum wasn't to be. I was meant to be going on a climbing trip the week after, and like I said, I had to cancel it, but they said I could move it. So I just looked at what else I could do, and I was like, oh shit, I can climb this. And it was like, okay, 8 months ambitious goal. I'm not sure if I'll be able to walk, but if I am, like, I want to have a goal. So I went for that. And yeah, that was pretty silly in terms
What kind of training did you have leading up to that?
Not a lot, because we were in lockdown and everything. So I was just trying to do a lot of running and cycling, really. And then just the month before it, I luckily have a friend who does do quite a lot of mountain climbing. So I went to visit him in Munich, where it was just fortunate on the timings of when we weren't in lockdown to be able to go see him. And we climbed like the biggest mountain in Germany together and another one in Austria, which was like my training. So yeah, a few weeks ahead, I actually climbed some mountains, and like I couldn't have climbed them anyway. Like the month before that, really, I wasn't really fit enough because like it took a long time from being able to walk to being able to like because you can't run for a long time because you put like a lot more weight through your leg on the impacts and stuff. So I couldn't really train at all for a very long time. So I was literally, I think if it had been like 2 weeks earlier, I probably wouldn't have been fit enough to do it, kind of thing. It was very like borderline timing, which was really lucky. Yeah, so that was cool though, and a crazy experience. And I mean, people should know the mountain. It's the if you've ever eaten Toblerone, it's the mountain that's on that that I climbed. But I had to get up at like 4 a.m. when you're kind of halfway up the mountain to climb the main part of it. And like, I thought it'd be okay, but it was super scary because you can't see where you're going at all, and you just got this like mile drop beneath you, and a lot of it you're not actually tied to anything. And you're like, what the shit is going on? I mean, I could just die so easily. And you're like, yeah, you just have to carry on. I'm like, fuck's sake. And you're like, well, even if I turn back, like, it's going to be just as scary. So it makes no difference. I'll just carry on. But you're like, it was just, yeah, it was a pretty surreal, like, I could just remember being back in bed, being like, oh, in the hospital, being like, wondering if I was going to die. And then being like, yeah, I'm also here, like, put myself back in this situation. Why have I done this? I don't know. I kind of feel bad for my mum right now. And made it through.
How much do you think those adventures, how much do they benefit you in your daily life? I mean, I know that we talk about, facing struggle and, overcoming challenges, and that has to have some practical consequences, results for your daily life.
It's definitely perspective. One thing was, so I mean, I said I woke up at 4 a.m. to climb, and so by 8:30 we're at the top of the Matterhorn. So every time I wake up, I've got this like alarm thing that says like, oh, by the way, you reach like the top of one of the scariest mountains by 8:30, and so it's like it sort of just forces you to be like, okay, I can definitely achieve some pretty cool things each morning, and it's just like it's a handy reminder to be like, okay, you can definitely take on and do like a big scary thing right now. When you wake up a bit late and you're like, oh, life's too difficult. You're like, wait, no, life isn't that difficult. You're just kind of kidding yourself. So that's handy. And I guess it's also really handy on the perspective of when you do come really close to death, it's quite, I don't know, I just sort of accepted it in that being dead, there's nothing bad about being dead as such, as in if you're the one that's dead, because it's just a nothing. It's like if there's like a scale of like 10 is awesome, happy times, -10 is like the worst thing you could feel. Being dead is just a naught. There's nothing there. And so when if you think that you're about to die, it's kind of like, well, everything in my life that I'm kind of worried about doesn't really matter anymore, because of like, I'll be dead, so there's nothing to panic about. And all of my to-do list doesn't matter. All of these things I want to do doesn't matter because they're not going to happen. And it's quite stress relieving. And you can kind of think about any time that you are stressed or feel down about things, it's like, well, this is kind of worse than being dead, which could lead you to want to go to suicide, but like it doesn't, don't worry. But it just means that like, okay, I'm just being stupid. Like I'm just kind of annoying myself right now by whatever bad feelings I'm feeling because of like I'm alive. So there's unlimited potential for me to do fun stuff with the rest of my life. Like, or I kind of just appreciate that instead of dwelling on like whatever bad things happened. And so it's very handy for that perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. And I could see the need to have recurring adventures, to do things as often as possible so that you keep the volume turned down on all the stuff that doesn't matter as much as possible. I've had some close calls in life myself. I've never climbed a mountain, so I could just imagine how much climbing the scariest mountain in the world or whatever, most dangerous, how that might affect your volume on everything else, all the mundane, all the simple things that tend to drag us down in life, that it seems like it's a crisis sometimes at the moment. But then when we take perspective, we realize it's really not that big of a deal when you take a step back and look at it But over time, like since, it's been a while since I've risked my life or have been in a close call type of situation. And so the proximity to that event tends to, it makes the experience fade somewhat. And so, sometimes I get to thinking to myself, I need to go do something to get some kind of a thrill, to get some kind of an adrenaline producing situation to kind of wake me back up again and turn that volume back down. And so I can see, scheduling things that would kind of create that adrenaline rush might be pretty important in order to kind of keep that ball rolling.
Yeah, definitely. It's the hedonic adaptation problem that we face as all humans, and everything's kind of relative to like your recent memories of things. So you are kind of pretty adapted to whatever's just going on. And when you're used to something being really nice and then suddenly it's like a little bit less nice, it's like, oh shit, this is terrible. And it's all a bit surreal. I was having a funny moment the other day. I don't know, I was just making like a yogurt for dinner, and I had like my soy coconut yogurt with like this vegan chocolate protein and like organic cacao nibs, and I was just like, what the shit is going on? I just ordered this off Amazon with one click. Like, my life is way too comfortable, and like, who even needs all this weird vegan stuff? I mean, it's great that I can have it, but like, I could just be hunting in the middle of the woods. Like, it was just a weird moment of like, how the hell has my life got to being this comfy? And it's just kind of strange how unreal our life is compared to where we came from as animals, kind of thing. And yeah, like, it's very hard to keep that appreciation because we're not designed to as humans. Like, we're sort of designed to be slightly unhappy the whole time and always want more, because that's just like evolution, and why the people that have that survived and the others didn't, kind of thing. So it's a hard one, trying to get out of your own way on that part, but you can try, I guess.
It's kind of a balance though, isn't it? Because
exactly.
we are evolving to constantly improve. And at the same time, as we're evolving into self-improvement and improvement as a whole, as a race of human beings, we're leaving behind something else at the same time. We're leaving behind that just innate mindfulness of, nature of where we're at and where we come from. Technology is a big perpetuator of that. So it's kind of a strange balance we kind of try to keep in order to hang on to the stuff that we need to and yet move forward.
Yeah, 100%. I find it difficult, but in terms of the original question around regularly scheduling some kind of excitement, I think you can kind of engineer it a bit more in your life without necessarily having to do like crazy things like climbing huge mountains, although it's really nice to do the really big stuff. But like I said in lockdown, where I kind of just did like the week of only eating porridge or something, just to sort of be like, wait, what's something I've never done before? And you can kind of have adventures at home, or you can, I don't know, just try dunking yourself in the bath and see how long you can hold your breath and go further. Or like, I'm near the sea at the moment, it's winter, so I'm just trying to go in the sea most days, even though it's freezing. It was like windy and hail this morning, and like the sea's on my doorstep. There's nothing stopping me from going in it apart from me being like, oh, it's cold, I shouldn't go in the sea. But then you do, and life doesn't implode, and you've done like a really scary hard thing. And so you can do stuff. Or like, there's a really good book by Alistair Fothergill, I think it is, or no, Alistair Humphreys, who he cycled around the world for 4 years. He's a really cool guy. But then when he got back, he started doing these things called like micro adventures, where he just try and have an adventure from his doorstep every day for like a year. And so you can hitchhike from your own home. You don't have to go to like, I hitchhike across Kazakhstan, but you can hitchhike across like your local county or anything, and still meet crazy people and do weird shit, and just sort of say yes to scary stuff if you let yourself. Or like, okay, ban yourself from watching TV one evening and just sit in front of an empty notebook and try and write some, like a novel. Like, it's kind of scary. Blank pages are scary. Like, there's so much stuff you can do without necessarily doing like the traditional climbing a mountain. Basically is what I'm trying to say.
Or hiking across Kazakhstan. You glossed over that again. What was, because that was on my list of things. It's like, what, I don't know. How do you even do that? Where does that come from?
That was really random. So I was starting an AI business in Hong Kong, and we got funded to go out there. And I was like, oh, I might not have any time for adventure after this because I'll be running this business for like a few years and stuff. So I was looking at flights to Hong Kong, and I worked out that I could do it slightly cheaper by flying to the near end of Kazakhstan and then hitchhiking to the far end of Kazakhstan, more east, and taking a flight from there to Hong Kong. Just as I was like scanning through different things, I was like, okay, that's cool. And I had a friend who I'd done some climbing with, and he wanted to kind of go through the Stans anyway because we've been doing some travel together. So we decided that we'd meet up in the near side of Kazakhstan and then hitchhike across it together. Turns out it's really big, Kazakhstan.
How long did it take to get across it?
It took I think about 8 days, but we maybe it was 10, but we were pretty full on. We caught some pretty good hitches in terms of like lorry drivers. There's a lot of lorry drivers that work together in like pairs. I found out doing this because they kind of, if someone has a breakdown or something goes on, like you've got your friend to sort of help you and stuff. So we met a lot of lorry drivers, but also loads of random crazy people. But yeah, it didn't take as long as I thought it might, and it was really cool. We just got to meet lots of people that you'd have never really known about that much, and then we still had a few days at the end to go hiking in some of the mountains, and yeah, it was really nice. I like.
So you took a flight to then hitchhike to another flight. Is that right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, we went into like the capital Astana and then hitchhiked to Almaty on the other side. Basically,
could you imagine doing that?
No.
It'll take it'll cost slightly less if you fly from here to here, but we can hitchhike from there to there and then we'll fly again. That's crazy.
That's why I talk to people like Sam, because I don't see myself doing that. But that's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I would have done it if it cost like a little bit more. I was just trying to find a way for adventure, but it was like, oh, cool, I would technically save 50 quid, so sounds even better. But
you said you met people, but did you have any? Wasn't there a language barrier there? I mean,
yeah, mostly they spoke Russian.
Okay,
but some people spoke like a few words of English and a bit, and some spoke more. So yeah, so some truck drivers did have some kind of fun conversations with, and yeah, I think one was like delivering baby food, other was like full of beer and odd stuff. We had one set of guys who ended up in this like weird food competition to who could like down the most raw eggs at like a truck stop with a bunch of other truckers. That was not the nicest kind of thing to like. I don't have much to say about the Kazakhstan food, to be honest. It wasn't great anyway. I think we got picked up with this one guy who just like, oh, I've got this really rich friend, you should meet him. And we ended up just getting taken to this villa with this guy who also didn't speak any English, so it was just kind of weird. We just sort of drank cocktails and went in this pool for a bit, and then he put us in this van that was just like disgustingly full of like meat in like open caskets and things and bits of dead pig and stuff, and we're just sort of put in the back of it afterwards, having not spoken English to any of these people. I had no idea what the fuck was going on, having just been given this weird drink, and we're like, are we about to get murdered or something because of like this weird rich guy's just taking this, and sort of what the shit is going on? And it was kind of concerning, and yeah, it was fine. They dumped us on like the roadside somewhere where we could get a lift, and
they could have just chopped you up and put you in that, and nobody would have ever known.
Exactly. We were like, shit, we just some like weird like European hitchhikers that they're just like, oh fuck it. It's a scary moment.
I just wonder what kind of rich guy keeps pieces of dead pig in the back of his van.
Yeah.
Like, what does he do?
It was like quite a big van for transporting stuff. It wasn't just like a small van, and it was like trays and trays of just meat and bloody stuff. It wasn't like a few bits of dead pig. But yeah, it was weird to be like putting it, but yeah, my bag was on top of a dead pig, and that was like, ew.
But the stories you bring home, though, that's what it's all about, right?
Yeah, exactly, and that's definitely sort of a philosophy I've tried to stick to in terms of like life is pretty short, and as in you're the only person that gets to experience your whole story. So even if you're just telling the story to yourself, it may as well be as interesting as possible. And like each day you get to write a page about what happened today. And it's like, well, what would be like a really fun page to happen? And when you get like the two choices, like it's always go for like the crazy one that's like interesting, as opposed to, oh, and I didn't get in a weird van that was full of dead animals today because of it looked scary. I just sort of said no and politely declined. Like, that's not an interesting story. It's like, oh, I jumped in and then was like, shit, why have I jumped in? And anyway, kind of, it's just, yeah. Philosophy, I feel.
And you survived. That's good.
Yeah.
You are, I guess, I don't know if you can really frame yourself as being one thing, but computer programmer, is that correct? Are you a programmer of the?
Yes.
Okay. Yes. All right.
Yes, but like, you know how I said how slow I am? I'm just like, definitely it's not my strong point. As in, I'm quite good at algorithms, but it's taken a long time to put the whole thing together. So it was quite nice. Like on my current business, it's a tech business. I was doing the code for the first few months and got stuff together, but it's been much nicer employing people to do that now.
Right. Yeah.
Rather than focusing on it. So I wouldn't say I'm like a pro programmer exactly. I would say like junior, mid-level.
Okay. And the reason why I ask is because doing something like programming, which I don't, but I know computer programmers, it seems like almost the opposite side of the continuum from, hitchhiking across Kazakhstan. That's a very diverse and broad range of activities that you have in life.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering how, you just seem to be, you do everything. You do everything that you want to do, that you need to do. It's just very interesting to me because I don't know if you realize this or not, but most people do not have that same approach to life. We tend to get in our little niche, we get into that thing that we might be good at or something we're interested in. And we tend to hyper focus on that. And that's what we do. And there might be 3 or 4 things that we do, but to go from one extreme to the other seems very, very interesting to me. And I'm just wondering if you have any more insight into how that mindset came about. Did you have, people that influenced you in your early life and you thought, hey, I want to be like that? Or was it just a thing that you gravitated towards and it kind of just spiraled from there? Or what happened?
Yeah, I think some of it's kind of innate, as in I was really excited by being a surgeon when I was like 16, 17. And I do really like cutting things up and just sort of the adrenaline of something really serious going on. It's like I get quite calm in those scenarios. So I thought I'd really like surgery. But then the idea of going to medical school for like 8 years and then being a surgeon for the rest of your life was like, wait, this is like the rest of my life is too defined. And like, I just innately like the randomness and the opportunity to completely change what I'm defined by. And I've never, as in I jump into things and do them really full on. But then as soon as people are like, oh, Sam's the guy that does this, I'm always like, ooh, I don't like being the guy that just does that. And I kind of want to do something else. Apart from, it's got to the point now where I'm the guy that just does like way too many things. And like, actually, I need to be the guy that actually perhaps stands for something a bit more, as like actually gets good at something, as opposed to being a bit of a hectic nightmare. So that's why I was saying like I want to have like my indistractable theme for this year and be a bit more better at executing on stuff, perhaps. But I'm trying to think of when I was a kid, what might have pushed me into that mindset. But it's hard to think about in terms of, I guess, just always partly with dyslexia, I guess, perhaps it's in never really accepting how you're being taught about things, or just not so much not accepting, it's just not really getting any results from the way you're taught and just being very self-sufficient and doing things. You just have like a rebellious nature. You just kind of assume that whatever you're being told is kind of wrong or whatever you should do. So as soon as you get defined by something, that's what you should do. So I kind of do the opposite. Or, I mean, I tried lots of drugs as a kid, but then as soon as I felt like if you take cocaine, like it immediately makes you want to take more. And as soon as I feel like something's making me do something, I'm like, no. So I never had an issue with getting addicted to anything, because it would be like, oh, I don't want to do this anymore as soon as something tells me I have to do it. So I don't like restrictions or feeling like I should do something, I guess.
Yeah, that's interesting that you mentioned the drugs, the way that cocaine just its goal is to make you want to do more cocaine.
Yeah.
And then after that, you want to do more. And so that's a very restrictive process. And that's, of course, you mentioned it, how a lot of people become addicted. And that was the reason why you didn't keep taking it, is because you could felt that drive from the substance itself.
Yeah. I guess it's a good quality if you want to try all the different drugs without worrying about getting addicted to them.
Right.
So, I mean, I now know what like most of them are like, which is great, and don't need to take them again. I like the psychedelics. Still, I mean, I don't want to take them like too much at all. But I feel like some experiments, so like maybe like once a year on sort of acid or shrooms is kind of healthy, just to kind of get out your brain a little bit and see the world from like completely different perspectives. But if you do it like a lot, then it's just constantly just having like too many huge epiphanies of how to change your life, and you kind of need to have some kind of basis of actually following up on these things.
Yeah.
Are those used in these those retreats and stuff that you do, or no? Or is it just you and
I haven't
your mind?
done any of those. So like the silent meditation retreats, no. I think at one point, I think on like day 6, probably felt like I know this 1-2 hour session where it literally felt like my entire body was just sort of like exploding or something. It was really weird, and you can kind of get to that sort of somehow state internally, which is pretty amazing. But I've never done an ayahuasca retreat. That's definitely on the list of things to go and do at some point, because they sound insane. But I don't know. Have you read Michael Pollan, How to Change Your Mind?
I have not.
It's a book about like drugs and how you can use them to like positively change your mind for like therapy of depression, or just coming over something, whether it's like a breakup or because you're like a moody person or whatever it is. But yeah, having guided drug experiences, I think, can be really beneficial. I haven't really tried it with any drug specifically, but I've been taking things with like intention, but I've never tried. But then some people have tried like MDMA and that stuff, like for during the day, just for like talking therapy and stuff, and probably would be good because I think you're a bit more expressive. But I don't know, maybe at one point I'll try it. We'll see.
Over in the States now, they're finally coming to the conclusion that drugs like psilocybin and even MDMA have this huge therapeutic value, and though it's not like what you would consider probably a guided, trip, it is in fact being used for purposes of opening up the mind and kind of rooting out some of the negativity, being able to see things that you and sense things that you wouldn't normally.
They're using it for like war veterans and stuff too, right? For like PTSD and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. It's been really good.
So it's about time, it's there. I guess there are a lot of folks who you consider partying on even the psychedelics, but they really have a therapeutic nature about them. It should be about an experience that is that epiphany, and it kind of opens up some doors for you to, it can guide you through your times where you're not on that particular substance. You should be able to, it should reverberate through those times because of the door that you opened from that experience. I think it seems like to me more people are understanding that now, even in the more professional scientific communities, and not just your typical hippie type of drug users. Definitely.
I think it kind of just got a bad rap of people using it for enjoyment, and then if people do get addicted and stuff, and then it does have problems, but we kind of just ignored all the medical beneficial sides of it just because it sort of seemed a bit too like airy fairy or for the wrong purposes. But yeah, it's definitely getting a better looking from science now, which is great. And I think like the work Tim Ferriss and other people doing to fund that stuff is really cool. So it's exciting times. I think in 10 years we'll have a very different perspective in terms of the legalities of it all. And it's going to be good.
Looking forward to see where that takes us. But
but I mean, there's also just the ever growing wave of depression and anxiety and pointlessness of all our lives is kind of a bad thing. So we'll see if it counteracts or not, or if we just all get lost in like the world of VR. Like so many things that happen.
There's another rabbit hole that we could the plugging into the matrix. But what we've been talking about thus far, there's a lot of things that I think is a way for a person to really find themselves. And for a lot of people, that's tough. Being on a silent retreat, which I've never been once again. I do practice mindfulness meditation, and even that sometimes is difficult because of the self that is always, kind of floating around in there, so to speak. And it's, those demons, those things that tend to pop up. I could just imagine 10 days having to deal with your own self and only yourself, and the pains of your body and your dead legs and those things, or being in any of the places where you've been, including climbing the mountain, where it's really you versus you. Have you? Would you say that you could frame it as if you have found yourself, or you found, that thing, that construct? Have you been able to kind of dissect that and really know who Sam Harris is?
I think you can't ever truly know exactly who you are because we're constantly changing, but I've become very comfortable with who I am and accepted a lot of things, and I certainly don't try to change myself to suit what's going on, or like I'm pretty confident of like, okay, this is how I am, and like pretty happy with that. And so yes, I've definitely become way more self-confident in the way I am and don't really question it as much, which has been really, really lucky. As in, I'm still quite young, but I've had so much time to myself and doing pretty crazy stuff is like kind of amazing. So as in, it sounds a bit up yourself to say that you've truly found yourself in these things. So I don't really want to say yes exactly, but I'm still constantly learning, and every day you look back at like even the day before and you can look at like mistakes and things that you're like improving on. But you definitely get some really deep introspection on the Vipassana side of things, especially in the first few days when you realize you have like no control of your brain, and it's not a difficult instruction. Sit still, follow your breath, just listen to yourself breathe in and out, and literally you can't do it for more than a few seconds, and you're like, what the hell is my brain doing? I have no control over this thing, and this is the thing that like it controls my life, and I can't tell it to do what I want it to do. It just does random shit all the day, and you're like, wow, that's kind of interesting to think about, because how much control do I really have? Why am I doing all these things? And yeah, it's really helpful to kind of give you that perspective. But then you also you see what the things are that your brain wants to think about a lot. And it's sort of like you spend the first 3 or 4 days just getting to terms with like just your current stuff. And then by like the 5th, 6th day, you've got rid of all like the day-to-day chattery nonsense that goes on and like the recent stuff. And that's where you get into like the deep who the hell you are and why you're at these ways and why stuff's always been like that in your life and stuff. And that's where you kind of really go deep on working on who you are. And when that stuff kind of comes out, and once you start dealing with that, that's when you then start to be able to achieve like the actual quiet meditation, because of there's like these demons and whatever inside of you that you've come out and you've like actually looked at and been like, okay, that's why I do this thing. I can just do it differently, or you can accept it as it is. Or it's really cool. It's a super powerful process to go through. And it's like the doing a bit of meditation each day is really useful, but it's in no way the same. So yeah, it's hard to really explain. And yeah, I kind of definitely missing it at the moment, because I was meant to go and do one in a few weeks' time, and because I haven't done one in like 2 years, and I'm like, shit, because it's all been cancelled with coronavirus again. But yeah, maybe you guys want to go and do one now. We'll see.
I'm interested for sure.
I would love to. I really would.
I mean,
you guys are pretty
definitely
curious.
makes me nervous though.
Yeah, absolutely.
Finding out what's really going on up here in this brain. I don't know if that's a good idea or not.
Yeah, who knows? Like, it took me a while to do it, except I hadn't really heard about it. And then when I was traveling around for that year, like I interviewed 3 people on my podcast who had all done it, and I interviewed them just because they were really cool people that I'd met, and I thought they were super interesting. And when it says like, okay, 3 of the most interesting, nice people that I've met in this year have all done this thing, I was like, okay, I should probably go and do it. But like the first person was that he told me about it, I was like, wow, this guy's just a crazy weirdo. Why is he sat still for a thing? And like, I didn't really do it. By the second, I'm like, well, maybe I should think about it, but no, it just sounds stupid. Why would I take 10 days out of my life to do nothing? And by the third one, I was like, oh wait, there's a really big theme here of like all the coolest people that I've met have all done this thing, and they say it's the best thing they've ever done with their life. Like, okay, I still haven't quite worked out what I'm going to get out of this, but like, I'm just too curious to not go and do it. And even if it's just hard and shit, like it'll just be hard, and I get to have done a hard thing, I guess. So that's kind of why I went and did it, because I still couldn't work out why I would do it besides the challenge. But then when I did it, I was like, oh, holy shit, this is the best thing I've ever done. And yeah, so I guess that was again on the theme of being scared of something and doing it, and then being like, oh wow, there's so much more good from facing this scary thing.
So you've probably already answered this, but refresh me if you would. Why was it the best thing that you've ever done? What really did you get out of it?
I realized a lot more sort of about myself and life, and made me a lot calmer. And like I said, around like the whole pain thing, it just buys you so much more time to think about why you're feeling something and not react. So you're less reactive and more deliberate in what you do, and you can have some logic and stuff. And you get to gamify life by the end of it. You have these things that are annoying you, and you realize that if you spend enough time thinking about it, you can logic yourself out of being annoyed about anything pretty much. And it's kind of like when you start getting annoyed, you're like, okay, there's no reason to be annoyed. I'm just being stupid. And you can kind of come up with a logical argument as to why life doesn't need to be annoying, or that you cannot be stressed. And I guess like one thing that like I had a lot of sort of various like epiphanies on the way to this, but one thing that like a nice story was during my travels before I got to this thing, one of the guys I interviewed, who's like a super nice guy, I'd been staying at his house, and he had like this new kitchen. And then like later I'd gone to stay with my sister, who also had like a new kitchen because she lived in Australia at the time. And when I was in her kitchen, I was always kind of afraid that I was going to do something bad, because she was constantly like, Sam, don't mess up with this. And it was just kind of like worrying and stressful the whole time being in a kitchen, if I ever like left a mark somewhere and stuff. And it was kind of odd. But then in this guy's house, who like I'd arrived at him, I'd literally met him once before I went to Malaysia to meet him, and he just like let me stay in his house for the month, gave me the keys to his car, was just like, do whatever the hell you want. It was like too nice and super relaxed about everything. And then one day we'd gone to the cinema together, and we'd been like boiling these beans in his new kitchen, and we'd forgotten about them. I'd gone to the cinema, came home, and they'd like overboiled, and this like black tar had like gone all the way down his new cupboards. It had like burned into his sort of oven on the top, and it just smelled so horrendous when we walked in. It was just like this like burnt kind of like hair smell all over his kitchen, and then it had gone under his cupboards, and it was just like the worst thing you could do to someone's new kitchen. It like ruined his pan and everything. And I was expecting him to kind of be like, holy shit, what have you done to my kitchen, and be angry and like be annoyed or something. And then he was just like, oh, well, I've got to go to bed because like I've got to get up early tonight. And he just like had a protein shake because he was on some things, and just went to bed. And he had this thing on the next morning because he had to give a speech, and he got up early and did a good job of his speech. And so me and my mate were like, shit, like did everything we could to like fix his kitchen. And like by the time he got back the next day, we bought him like a new blender for his protein shakes and stuff, and he was totally fine about it. And like, so I kind of thought he might be a bit stupid from like his lack of reaction to it at the time, but it was really nice. But then like I realized in the process, it's like, okay, what he did was like freaking mind wizard level nuts shit, because he could have got annoyed and shouted at us. He could have spent the whole night being angry and frustrated at his kitchen and not slept well and given a shit speech the next day. It would have been awkward because we'd have like probably ruined our relationship. We'd have probably just left or something if he shouted at us lots, and like relationship would have been over. He wouldn't have got like his new protein shaker, like blender thing that we bought for him. He just made his life shit by getting annoyed. But instead he just didn't get annoyed at all and just had a good night's sleep, had a good life, woke up the next day, everything was fixed. Plus he got some new shit. And like, we liked him even more because if he didn't shout at us. So his life got better by not getting annoyed instead of doing the thing that every human would have done. Like my sister, who is a lovely human, but like would have got annoyed. I would have got annoyed if somebody just potentially like ruined my new kitchen. And it's like, okay, you definitely shouldn't get annoyed so much. And then it was kind of like, yeah, so your reactions are just not always that useful when you can think about it. So that was like a holy shit, this guy actually was really a wizard. When I kind of just thought he was stupid a little bit until like I was in the middle of that Vipassana at some point, and I was thinking about how I used to get annoyed about people in my Airbnb kitchen sometimes, and I was like, Bob never gets annoyed, what's going on there? And yeah, so that was an example of one of the revelations, one meditation sitting that I had.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any opinions on free will? Do we honestly have any free will as a human being? And I'm getting somewhere with this, but I need to know your opinion first.
It depends on as in we're kind of just all of one big chemical reaction on that sense of thing, and whatever's going on in your brain that was sort of going to happen in that sense. But as in your entire life up to now is kind of dictated what mindsets you have and what you're going to do next, and you didn't really get to choose that as such. So it's a very confusing but interesting debate, because also whatever you are doing, you are choosing, and you can change your circumstances based on what you think. And I don't like one-sided black and white answers to things. I think everything's a bit not just like a murky shade of gray, but like an intricate pattern of the both that kind of forms a picture or something. And I'd say it's a mix of, okay, you are defined by what's happened to you and what else is going on in the world, and your environment very much dictates things, but you still do influence the way things are. So you definitely should have like full ownership of everything that does happen to you in the future and all this stuff. And I'm interested to see what you guys think on this. But certainly watching the Matrix series is always a fun one to talk about free will.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Well, when you were talking about meditation, and it reminds me of being able to basically, in a sense, see that full consciousness as it arises, in the construct of your mind, and how that is. Because I often say I don't use the term no free will or lack of free will, but I do believe that we're a slave to our experience. And there's a reason why what pops up next in my flow of consciousness. There's a reason why that happens, and it's based from my experience. And so an experience is a moving thing, right? It's a flow. It keeps going forward. So I do believe that there's a Goldilocks of free will, a Goldilocks zone. I didn't get to choose where I was born, what country, what family I was born to. I was born a male. There's all these things I had absolutely no say in whatsoever. And then there's other on the very far end of the continuum on that lack of free will. I'm made up of all these cells and these little micro things that are crawling all inside of me and on top of me, and all these organs that function without me having to tell them what to do. In that sense, I have little free will as well. But there's, I do have the ability to make choices, everyday choices. I have the ability to know what's right or wrong. Now, if you want to split that hair even more so, there's a reason why I think something is right and something is wrong. And that also is included in that flow of consciousness. So when I'm presented with something, then there's this thing in my mind that says, okay, you should or shouldn't do this based off of the moral compass that I possess. And once again, that's based from me being a slave to my experience. And so I was just wondering your thoughts on the flow of consciousness, since no doubt during your long retreat there in meditation and your ongoing practice, I'm sure you're able to kind of see, consciousness in its parts. You can see when you get that quiet time, which I'm sure you'll get some over these next 10 days when you're retreating from the human civilization. You're going to be able to see that flow of consciousness, to that degree. But you also make so many choices, and you've made choices. What really triggered this was you were talking about how people telling you things, you weren't going to be complacent with that. And you weren't going to basically settle for just average. You're going to push yourself. You don't want to be stereotyped, put it in a box. those are you making those decisions, making those choices, and not just doing what's been presented to you or being what's been presented to you. But at the same time, there's a reason why your flow of consciousness is presenting those thoughts into your mind as well. So it's a very complex problem or discussion at the very least. But I was very curious about your insight into that, because you are you're a person who has such diverse interests, and you do a lot of adventurous things and always pushing yourself to do more. And at the same time, you're wanting to slow down and do less and be more focused. And so all those choices are obviously deliberate. And I was curious about where your thoughts lie on that.
Yeah, well, I guess like I was saying, that you can kind of logic yourself out of any negative thoughts. So as in, like I said, like you can not be angry and you think about it long enough, or like I mentioned earlier about if you think about death as like a naught, and anything unhappy is less than that. So like, why would you spend yourself being unhappy? And everything that you experience is your own choice internally, for sure. And if you look at people like David Goggins and stuff, and like the life that he had, or certainly like myself, I've met people that have had similar bad experiences to me, and then reacted in completely different ways. And it sort of maybe hasn't like maybe facing their fears hasn't helped them, and sort of like just put them like further down. It's just given like another excuse to like be a failure or something. And it's like, you definitely have the choice of how you react and go forwards. But I'm not sure how much of that comes from actually like your genes and from like the environment of how you were brought up, like we spoke about, as in, was it something that actually made me be more like this way? Or I don't know. And if maybe, I think most people, if they did get put on a Vipassana, would have a much better mindset and make better choices with the rest of their life having done it. But some people actually would do react badly to too much time with their brain and things. And it's a kind of endless you can kind of argue both sides, I think, till the sun comes home, and I guess you have the choice to stop arguing and then accept it. And but I think the important thing is to not be unempowered by the world and the fact that, like I was saying, is in like our lives are increasingly sort of useless and meaningless, and you always have the choice to actually find meaning for yourself in different ways. And part of that is choosing to be positive and doing the things that excite you. Maybe that is staying and doing the same thing every day because you like doing it and focusing, or maybe it's doing completely different shit as rapidly as possible and working out what is right for you and doing it, basically. I guess I would go with that.
Cole, do you want to jump in?
I'm good.
No.
if I jump in,
did you choose to say nothing, or was that like what you're
he's expressing his free will right now?
Mm.
That is free will, Colt, what you just did. So yeah, it is a tough conversation, but it also, it kind of cascades for me into meaning. Because if I'm predestined or predetermined, then what is my meaning? How do I find that? Or am I given just enough leeway to shape my own? So have you found not just the meaning of life, because that's a very general and broad question. Like, what is the meaning of life? Well, I mean, it depends on where you're coming from. If you're a frog, the meaning of life means you hop around and you find flies and you find some water, and that's your life. But if you're a human being, it's a little bit more complex, a little bit different. We have the awareness, we have the consciousness to be able to ponder what the meaning of life is, and therefore, since we can ask the question, then we can grow from that and shape and develop ourselves into what that idea really means. And hopefully to the best of our intentions. You take your moral compass, you point it to the direction that it's, that you feel like it should go. Try to be the best person you can, and you construct your meaning from there. But there's a meaning to my life that I'm more interested in right now. I ask people, what is the meaning of your life? Because that's an even stricter definition. What is the meaning of your life? Why are you here? What are you doing? How are you shaping that? So Sam, let me ask you, what is the meaning of your life? Not to put you on the spot at all, but yeah.
No, not at all. I'll just completely evade it by answering a different question about meaning. And
okay. All right.
no. I think I'll get there. But I think that's one thing that a lot of people are struggling with is what is the meaning of their life. And like I said the other day, I was sort of just mind bucking myself at like, how the hell have I got this like weird yogurt stupid combination going on, and just how meaningless our lives are becoming as okay, there's just so much pointlessness to what we do at this level because there's so many more humans that it's hard to really do something sort of crazy amazing in that sense, as in so many records or like new worlds have been discovered or like science advancements and stuff. It's harder and harder to make a mark on humanity as a human, and that's something that really does give you meaning. And as in, we really love being understood and appreciated and needed, and it's kind of harder and harder to get people to pay attention to you as we have got like the attention economy and just more attention being attracted to others. Or if you think about like Instagram and stuff, like a blog that I've started writing is sort of the world, like you like the world like 100 times more than it likes you in terms of the amount of like celebrities that people follow and stuff, where like they're getting all these likes but then like there's so much less attention on you. It's kind of like, okay, you feel quite meaningless when that happens. And it's very hard to really feel like you're doing something, especially, well, there's just, if you look at like what most jobs are, like, okay, you're transporting people around the world, or like, why do people need to travel? Or if you, because they're going on holiday, but like, what's the point? Or do people need to have like an extra flavor on their pizza topping compared to like the normal pizza? And it's sort of, it's all just quite abstract and kind of pointless. And like, when there was less of us and less people were sort of educated, life was like a lot simpler. And okay, you're the person that like bakes bread, and that's cool because no one else in the village bakes bread, and you're pretty defined by that meaning. And people used to have the name like baker because like that was an important role in like the society they were in, and like they felt like they had a place. And so it's quite, yeah, when you start looking at it, well, like whatever you're doing is pretty minuscule in the meaningless of humanity. And so, yeah, it's kind of overwhelming when you look too deeply into it, I think. Yeah. But in terms of my own meaning, sorry, we can carry on in this tangent for a bit before I go back to myself if you want. I'm happy with that.
It is very subjective. And I was just curious to know where your thoughts lie on that, because like I said, you're just an adventurous guy. And I think this is the first time I've ever personally talked to someone who's been on a 10-day meditation retreat like that. I've heard, I listen to other podcasts and I've heard other people talk about things like that. So one of the main reasons why Colt and I do this podcast is for learning. We started it out more to give, our idea was to give a platform for ideas so there wasn't this argumentative, approach, one person disagreeing with the other and cutting each other off and so on and so forth. So we just wanted to give a calmer platform for disagreeing ideas. It ended up pretty quickly, though, that we realized that we can learn. This is a learning experience for me as well as for our listeners. And we like to kind of delve into the inner person of the people that we have the opportunity to meet and talk with and learn from your experiences. And so hence the questions on such things like that. I was curious as to where you would take off and go with that.
Sure.
For myself, and at first it sounds selfless, but let me finish because I'm not a completely selfless person by far. I have learned that one of the biggest factors of my identity, which identity is another great conversation to rabbit hole down. Where do you find your identity? How did you come to it? So on and so forth. But I found that my identity is really linked into helping other people. And by helping, I'm not talking necessarily like giving a charity or things like that. I'm referring to like magnifying other people, being like a coach. I work in the mental health field. And so a lot of what I do is helping people to think differently than what they do because their brains are disordered or something along those lines. But also I coach on things like career choices and relationships and things like that. And I'm also a coach for the staff who I oversee as well and manage. And to be able to see them kind of take off because of the perspective and the motivation that you instill into them is actually what I'm good at. So having said that, I've come a long way to get to this point to know that's what I'm good at. That's kind of my meaning in life, so to speak. Because sometimes I want credit too. Sometimes I'd like to be able to step back and say, you know what, I did this and I'm a badass. I did that and I'm good at it. You know, I want to be able to, at least within myself, I want to be able to stroke that ego a little bit. It never tends to work out for me though. It just never works out for me. So I'm almost kind of pigeonholed into this meaning of life. It's a good one. I'm not complaining about it. But it's just something that was kind of handed to me because I'm not good at being egotistical. Not really. I'm not good at being selfish. When I do, things don't work out properly. So it's almost just a matter of attrition that I came to my meaning of life. But it's, once again, it's a good one. I wouldn't trade it because, you know, it is something that I can actually kind of talk about and not feel like I'm a selfish asshole in the process, because I am, in fact, you know, trying to magnify others. And so the meaning of life to me is, it's not just this thought experiment that you go down and try to figure out what would be the ideal, the best thing that I could possibly think of that would make me shine as a person or whatever. It's actually kind of a collaboration of my own thoughts, my own ideals, as well as the experience I've had, and taking into account what I am good at and how I can, you know, help not just myself, but other people. So just kind of this big matrix of different ideals that are mine, and also that were given to me by life, I guess, by the cosmos, if you will. So yeah, just an interesting subject in my opinion. A rabbit hole that I tend to go down myself.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, that certainly get the impression that you'd be good at coaching people and getting the best out of people. You do ask interesting questions and things, and that's something I've certainly found a lot of meaning in myself, which also I think partly led to me running the podcast. As in, I coached a friend's little sister who was like failing all her exams, and like I was meant to be like actually specifically helping her with the specific subject, but like it was more like mindset coaching of actually teaching her that she wasn't stupid, and that if you wanted to pass them, she could just do the work, and like there's nothing stopping her from being smart just because she was at a shit school. And then she ended up getting like top marks and everything, and got like a funding scholarship to her uni. And it was like, holy shit, I like changed the way she thought, and she went and did that. It was like, crap, I can do this for so many people. So that really changed the way I thought about things. And I've just always been like, whenever people talk about problems, I'm always like on it, like, yeah, let's fix this, which is cool. But like, I think something I have noticed now is like I'm perhaps like a little bit too much coaching, when sometimes people just want to like vent their problems, and like I've never really understood why people complain, because it's like, oh, it's just wasting your time if you're not going to do anything about it. And trying to better understand and empathize what people actually want when they're talking, rather than just trying to solve their problems instantly, is something I'm trying to get better at. Or also understanding like that I don't always necessarily know what's best for them, and having a bit less sort of ego and around like, just because if I know that this would work, maybe a different thing works for them, and just being much more open with my coaching around like questioning them of like, okay, what do you really want and why, and rather than you should do this because if I think it works for you because it's what works for me, because actually I'm a bit weird, maybe what works for me isn't what's going to work for you, kind of thing. But that's part of what I get meaning from it. I just really love learning, I guess, and I certainly have a bit of a complexity around like wanting to change the world in some way. Like I was talking about, like someone having a stamp, which you sort of probably need to recognize that you're not going to do anything on that area, which is sort of a confusing one around. You shouldn't give up on your dreams, but you also shouldn't be disappointed when crazy big things don't happen, I guess, because otherwise you get depressed. And then otherwise, yeah, it's just like relationships and just making sure you have enough time to enjoy things with people and being social, as well as working on things that really excite you. Is just trying to find that balance. I think basically everything in life can come down to like finding the right balance on the thing. Like if you do something too much, it's bad. If you don't do it enough, it's bad. And yeah, working, like you should work hard, but too much is bad. Not enough is bad. Speaking, yeah, you need to find the right balance on that. Otherwise, you're just talking the whole time and you're pretty annoying to be around. But if you never listen, then yeah, it's like the same way.
Right.
Because like I used to listen all the time, but then like people thought I was a bit stupid because I was always listening and having like these amazing thoughts, but no one knew about them because I would never speak, and that wasn't very useful either. And like you're talking about sort of wanting to talk about yourself, so I found that quite hard ego wise. I didn't like speaking or like drawing attention to myself, and I always feel a bit weird like sort of posting things on social media or talking about myself in like a good way. It doesn't come naturally, but actually the people that do talk about their skills and what they're good at, like people listen to them a bit more because they probably think that they have skills, whereas if you don't ever say that, like no one thinks that you have any, and it's kind of trying to find balance in that. And
yeah, very good points. And I would say that you have definitely the foundation for, due to your experience, for being able to make a bigger impact probably than what you give yourself credit for, it seems like to me. And so I'm curious where you see yourself in the next 10 years. Do you have any, you have that long term of a goal? Do you have a vision of what Sam Harris is doing 10 years from now?
So I guess I've always wanted to make things happen more effectively, which is why I've run businesses, and I just want to be able to do that much faster. And it's kind of hard before you've had something like really big and successful to kind of get like investment and money to kind of do these things. But then, so I'm hoping with my current business that I kind of get the flywheel going in terms of, okay, I can actually sort of do something that becomes like a multi-million-pound business and can sell it, and then start having more ideas and make different things happen. Because there's a lot of different sort of flywheels I want to kick off in sort of science, environment and stuff, and then being like a general positive force for people's mindsets and encouraging them to do cool stuff, but then generally kind of ethics and like all areas. so trying to work out where I can be effective at them, because there's no point trying to do everything all at once. So one side is definitely on the business side, being able to like invest in founders that are doing cool things, or actually start businesses myself without it like taking my entire being just to do the one thing, because it's kind of slow. I'd like to have like multiple businesses running at once. So that's more like 5 years time. I'm not expecting it to happen straight away. Then the other side is just creativity, as in something I kind of, I can come across like I overthink things a lot, and it's hard to sort of explain, but I guess it's something I want to write about. I think it's like I wanted to find myself as being an explosive thinker, and that I just think it's not just like overthinking or something and just makes it worse for yourself. It's like thinking from all different directions on stuff. And so even when I used to learn guitar, like I said, I can remember things I've written. I can't remember stuff I'm taught, as in I kind of would constantly just be trying things and just writing stuff automatically. And I feel like I've got some unfinished business in like music. So I do want to like spend like 3 months locked in the cabin somewhere and just like record an album at some point and just make something that I'm really happy with, because I've written so much stuff that I really enjoy playing and is nice. Just haven't ever given myself the time and focus to go and do that. So that's the other main project at some point in the next 10 years. Then otherwise I want to do some ultra marathons and something really difficult on the fitness side.
Ultra math? Is that what you said?
Ultra marathon.
Ultra marathon. Okay.
Yeah.
I was thinking math. That sounded terrible.
Ultra math, no. Giving up on that side.
I'll be looking forward to the Sam Harris solo album that drops sometime in the next couple of years. But
yeah,
hey, before we let you go, are you open to talk about Syncify any? Is that something that's
yeah, definitely
conversation we can have? Tell us about Syncify, man, because I'm definitely, as a podcaster, I'm definitely interested. I don't know what it meant, but I signed up on the wait list.
Nice.
So yeah, I'm waiting for it, I guess. But tell us about that platform that you're building.
So Syncify was just an answer to some of the problems that I was having in podcasting. So initially as a listener, I just found it very frustrating being just in this like silo by myself whenever I listen to podcasts I'm on this app, but I have no idea what other people are listening to or where they're at or what's good. And it's very hard. And so it's just initially a social network for listening to podcasts, so you can see your friends and interact with them, and you can see what they've liked, what they didn't like. You can send each other like highlights of the best bits and talk about stuff and engage over the content. And let's say like you happen to be listening at some time in the morning and I'm like out for a run in the evening, I could actually see what you're listening to at that point in time and actually just join you in that episode and just listen together. And maybe afterwards, you know, you listen to some really cool entertainment for your cerebrum, and we could maybe have a chat about it afterwards because we both finish at the same point. And it's just a chance to really go further on the stuff that you listen to, because I just found it super annoying that I listen to all these things and then I just forget it. It kind of just goes in and then like I do nothing with it because I don't talk to anyone about it. I can't share my opinions, like, and it's just it's a bit of a waste of time in many ways. Whereas when you do talk with people about what you're learning, you get to see their perspectives on the thing. You get to like cement your own perspectives and like go much deeper on those thoughts because you're actually cementing them and actually doing something with them to like turn them into words to tell to someone else. So as a learning tool, it was something I really wanted. And so that's like the first stage is just making it so that you can engage with your friends and communities and learn more. And then once you've got that, you can then go on to the sort of making it much better for podcasters as creators, because one, they can engage with their audience better. If they're making really good content, people are talking about it and sharing it, so it grows better. But then also you can monetize it better, because currently if you want to charge people for extra content, I think it's really difficult because you have to give them a Patreon link, which is on a different website, which they have to go to, and then they have to kind of take that to another app, and they have to not be running at the time when you sort of tell them to go to that link, which they probably are running, and then they're not actually able to bother to go and do the thing. Whereas if you just one click with a button, get like the thing that you want to listen to, it's like, okay, actually, yeah, I would pay for some of the content that is out there. So it just makes it easier to commercialize. And especially when you like engage with the audience, you can do other things like sell swag or like have people come and talk to you and just the thing. So trying to make it easier for podcasters to commercialize, because you basically can't make any money as a podcaster until you get to like the 10,000 downloads an episode point, and then great, you can start putting adverts on your show, but maybe you don't want adverts anyway because of that kind of shit. And so trying to make that better as a podcaster experience. And then like in the next level, sort of third step, once we've solved those first two, I'm still currently in the first stage of the business, but like the long term is like, if you think of Twitter was like microblogging, they called it. So like allowing anyone to sort of express themselves in work back when it used to just be blogs where you could kind of talk about things and have an audience. And I think the world's going more into audio, and like so many more people are starting podcasts. But if you think about, okay, on WhatsApp, people are sending more voice messages and stuff, but actually I don't want to listen to like a 10-minute voice message from my mate on stuff, because if I'm kind of in WhatsApp, I'm trying to send messages and just communicate quickly. But I do actually want to listen to like more depth of what's going on in people's lives and stuff. So if you could make it easy for people to make like 5-10-minute podcasts and stuff, like I kind of would, because, or even on Instagram stories, it's like, I don't want to watch like a really long video of someone. Like I'm happy with like a quick like flick through things, but I'm on Instagram, I'm flicking. Whereas when I'm actually going for a run, I've got time to listen to stuff. I would listen to my friends for a longer amount of period if I could have like some updates on them. So allowing more people to create shorter content of podcasts of interest stuff just on their life, just for like your friends and things, I think is going to be a really big sort of like social wave of audio that's going to happen. And so trying to position ourselves to allow like anyone to be creators, not necessarily for a huge audience, but you'd still have like the bigger people and things. So like a real like social audio network of the future is also something that we think we'll go into. Maybe by the third stage, but maybe we'll just be busy with the first two things. Who knows? Yeah. But yeah, that's kind of what's going on.
Yeah, sounds great, man. I've already, like I said, I joined the wait list and looked at the landing site there, and I'm intrigued. I want to see what comes to fruition there. So anything that it's so in essence, let me see if I can frame it. It's like a social network for podcasters, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Let's just say that.
Fantastic. I like it.
Nailed it.
Well, Sam, we really appreciate you coming on today, man, and bearing with us while we have technical difficulties to get this show on the road.
It's nice.
Fantastic discussion, man, and hopefully we can stay in contact when you come back to civilization. We'll see how things went. Maybe I'll drop you a message and make sure that you are in fact coming back to civilization this time.
Yeah.
not just staying away because you like the quiet so much. But I'm sure you have plenty of projects that you want to do to get back to work on when you get focused and ready. So yeah, man, great to meet you. Thanks again for coming on. We appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks a lot, guys. It's really, really fun. Good show, I guess. So I listened to a few episodes as well before. It's felt really nice. I love the way you kind of question and go into deep stuff.
Yeah, we like to discuss. We don't just like to interview. We like to have conversations, and I think that makes the best. At least for me, that's what I want to listen to when I'm listening to podcasts. So
yeah. Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Nailed it.
All right, man.
Cool.
We'll see you.
Ciao.